Now, I don't know what you think, but there's been a great debate about whether you should travel down to Southampton to the port the day before. And we always do. But then we always do for anything. My feeling is you've spent a lot of money on this cruise or any holiday. And the last thing you want to do is something go wrong and you miss it. Now, I know there's people who have to come down on the bus, and there's people who say they have to work the night before. That's fine, I understand that, and if that's your circumstances, so be it. There's people who say they can't afford the room. Same again. But we once went to Carnarvon in that neck of the woods, and we got there okay. As we were about to set off home, the cylinder head blew up on the car, and we had to be towed. Well, we weren't towed, we were put on the back of the truck, on the AA truck, and we drove the whole way home, and it was an horrendous trip. It happens. And the thing is, if it had happened on the way down, and if it had happened on the way to Southampton, who knows if you'd have made it or not. So my theory is this: if I'm in the port or the airport the night before, and if everything goes pear-shaped, I can still grab a taxi and get to the place in relatively safety. It's no good complaining if your car breaks down halfway down the M1 and you're half an hour late getting to the port. Now, of course, that depends on where you live. If you live in Southampton, then yeah, of course you're not going to stop there overnight. If you live half an hour from Southampton, you're probably not going to do either. But for us, 3 hours drive, then we set off, we have done it before, where we've set off at silly hours in the morning, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, get in for 12, and then go and get on the ship, more or less. But there's a lot of stress involved in that. Just the fact that you're driving down and hoping there's no bad traffic, no accident, you're not caught up in an accident, no roadworks, just adds to the stress. Do that the night before, get down there, have a nice meal in a pub, a nice stay in the hotel, day in Southampton, really enjoyed it, and then onto the cruise. It's just part of the holiday, So I don't see it as a trial, it's just another day off. So we always book the Friday off as well, so we have to have an extra day. And yeah, I completely agree with all those people who say it's not for us, we can't afford it, we can't arrange it, that's great. But my personal view, we do the same for the airports. If we've got a morning flight and it's going to be a sort of a 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock start to get to the airport, we go up the night before and we stay over somewhere, and we have a leisurely 10-minute drive into the airport, or even a shuttle if there's one. And it's just that knowledge that you're there, nothing can go wrong with you there. I can't imagine anything worse than you get into the airport 10 minutes after that flight's gone. So, just my ideas, you do whatever you think's best. I mean, we knew it was going to be cold, and we know Norway's a cold place, but we've only ever been in July, and it's always been, very warm, nice weather, swimming pool stuff, I thought we might get a bit of snow on top of the mountains. I didn't think we'd pull into port, and it's actually snowing. So, just bear that in mind. If you're expecting nice, sunny, warm weather, then early April, March is not the time to book. I mean, someone at gate crashing. Hey, I'm filming. What can you do? Yeah, oh my god, it is snowing. There's a proper flurry starting to come down. And, yeah, so you've got to expect this. We didn't. So this is going to be interesting, because we're not really snowy people, to be honest. So, well, it's all different, isn't it? Now, let's get to basics. Which direction is the ship pointing, and which is left and which is right? Seems to be a bit of contention, and even now, 4 or 5 days into the cruise, people still don't seem to know where they are on the ship. So let me explain. The front of the ship is called the bow. It's spelt B-O-W. It's not bow, it's the bow. The back of the ship is called the stern. Now, knowing the bow from the stern isn't really important because they don't get labelled anywhere. What is important is you know the difference between forward and aft. If you think about it, the front of the ship is forward and the rest of the ship comes after it. Hence, it's called aft. So, you will see lots of labels around the ship, lots of signs that point forward and aft. Pretty good idea to figure out where you are on the ship, especially your cabin. And the other thing that you really need to know is port and starboard, and I'm not going to explain how those terms came about. There's plenty of other Google videos doing it, and my wife Sue is sick of me telling everybody the story. So what you need to know is port is left and starboard is right as you look forward towards the front of the ship, and all the decks are marked up port and starboard. And if you just remember that port has got 4 letters in it and so has left, that's sort of going to give you a clue. What you also need to know is that all the cabins on the port side are even numbers and all the cabins on the starboard side are odd numbers. So if you are like we are in 9204 and you're walking down the corridor and they all say 9205, 9207, 9209, you're never going to find your cabin because you're on the wrong side of the ship. So it is important that you just get to figure that out, and I would suggest whenever you come out of the lift, they all look the same and they all look the same regardless of which way you're pointing on the ship. So when you go to walk off the lift lobby and into one of the corridors, just check the sign before you walk out that you're going port or starboard, because it's so easy to make the mistake. And even we have found ourselves 2 or 3 doors down the corridor and said, hang on, we're in the wrong corridor, and have to turn around, go back, cross the lift lobby and out the other side. It happens. Keep a check on it. So another tip, always check what floor you're on when you get off the lift. Especially when you're only just awake and you're half tired and your eyes are asleep. Because I got off at 11 this morning when I was heading for 16 and it took ages for the next lift to let me on. So, no, always have a quick look before you get off.
Doors opening.
So one question that gets asked on a regular basis is the drinks package worth it? My opinion is, if you're a heavy drinker, and that means anything from 6 or 7 a day up to 15 a day, then it may well be that the drinks package is good for you. If, like me, you have 2 or 3 drinks a day, and they're like, if you have cocktails, £6, so that's £18. The drinks package is $39.99, so you're paying a lot of money for those extra drinks, and you almost feel then committed to actually having them. However, if you are into coffee as well, then that can be added on to that package, and soft drinks. So yeah, for people that drink a lot, then it can be worth it. For us, we have just done our own thing, and I think we'll end up being in pocket on this occasion. One thing to note, there is a 15 drinks a day maximum, and you have to have it for every member of your cabin, except it's the children, and they, I believe, have to have the children's package. The other thing to remember is that there's a price limit, and I think it's £6.25 or £6.75, I'm not sure, and a lot of the drinks are actually over that price, so you don't actually get a free all-inclusive any drink you like on this package. It is quite restricted. So again, if you're thinking of having the package, then what I suggest you do is you check out some of the other YouTube videos and also my video on P&O drinks pricing, which you can have a look at just here, and you will see the various drinks menus that give you some indication of the cost. Now, I don't do a lot of drinking anyway, so we don't go a lot to the pub, but I'm told by my brother who frequents the pub more than I do that the prices are very good. And I'm not surprised because we've been on P&O before and they are decent prices. Oh, one thing to notice, And it's a good tip. There's always one side of the ship that is windier than the other. Whether it's because of the way the wind's blowing onto the ship or the direction it's travelling, I don't know. But you normally find you can walk out on the port side and it's nice and calm, and then go out on the starboard side and it can blow you over, or vice versa. So yeah, if you come out and you find it's a bit windy on one side, try the other side. You might find it's better. Like now, I mean, amazing. So let's talk luggage. There's two ways this works. If you're flying, then your luggage allowance is dictated by your aircraft, and it's normally 23 kilos, but not necessarily. You need to check with your airline to see what the luggage allowance is. If you're travelling from Southampton, then that's a whole different story. You can take as much luggage as you like, but there's two overriding factors that you need to consider. The first one is space. You need to be able to get your cases and your bags out of the way so that the steward can do his stuff and clean the cabin. Now, there's a massive amount of space under the bed, and you can get really large cases under the bed. They're designed for that. If you just lift up the valance, they just slide under. I think you could probably get 4 to 6 large cases under there. And bearing in mind, if you can get the case inside a case, then that's even better. You can take as many as you like. There is a small amount of room in the bottom of the wardrobe, maybe a little bit more on the balcony wardrobes, but you don't want to be taking all your room up with cases, do you? So I would say probably 4 cases is the maximum you're going to get into a room comfortably. But you can take rucksacks, you can take stuff that will pack inside the cases. So there's really no limit. The only stipulation is that none of the bags can weigh more than 23 kilos, and that's just obviously for manual handling purposes. Apart from that, take as much as you like. Don't miss out on all those dresses, all the other goodies that you want to take with you. And of course, you can take soft drinks by the dozen. You can take a litre of spirits or wine. So there's a distinct advantage in sailing out of Southampton in that respect. And we tend to do that just so that we don't have to worry about the luggage allowance. We've been to the Caribbean with 15 kilos luggage allowance for 2 weeks. And believe me, that is a tight squeeze. Let's talk Wi-Fi and mobile phones. Now, in fairness to P&O, I've not tried the Wi-Fi, but a lot of people I know that have, and they've said it's fairly ropey. What I do know is it's quite expensive, and it's going to come down to how desperate are you to log onto the Wi-Fi, get your emails throughout the night, and get your Facebooks and everything like that. What I found, to my great surprise, was Vodafone was still doing free roaming, and so my mobile data and text and phone calls package still worked when we were in the Norwegian ports. So for me, we're going to get off the ship, and even if you don't get off the ship, you're getting a good phone signal when you're in port. So my own personal advice would be wait until you get into port and switch your phone on and just use the mobile data. 2 words of warning. Mine didn't do this, but Sue's did. Be careful your phone doesn't attach itself to the maritime network that's on the ship, and if you connect up to the maritime package, then your calls and texts are a horrendous cost, and you really don't want that. So my advice would be switch off your SIM card, which is in your phone settings under the mobile networks when you're not actually using it. That way you're not going to get hit with any silly prices. The other thing to mention is I'm on Vodafone. It just happened to be free. I don't know what EE have done. I think they were doing a certain amount of free roaming, but of course since Brexit all that's changed. So what is important is you check with your provider to make sure your roaming is free, because you don't want to get hit with any unexpected bills. Next question. Are excursions worth it? Well, this is a relatively easy and yet difficult question to answer. So, there are some excursions you'll find in the book that just aren't, in my opinion, value for money. For instance, walk around tour of Stavanger, £30 or £40 maybe. where you walk around with somebody around the streets of the town that we've just pulled up into. You can pay somebody to walk you around the town if you need to, but for me, save the £40, get off the ship, walk into the town on your own, do exactly the same as they're going to show you. Okay, maybe you haven't got anybody pointing out that this is the church, and this is the museum, and this is the library, but let's face it, do you really need to be paying somebody to tell you that? I don't think so.
It wasn't a long walk, it was just, and it's not even that steep.
Now, we were talking about excursions. There's going to be some places where it's just impossible for you to get to on your own, or it's a long distance and it's a long travel. And on those, I think you've got to bite the bullet and use the cruise line's own excursions, even though it might be a little bit more money. And the reason for this is quite simple. If you go off independently and something goes wrong and you can't get back in time, the ship's likely to sail without you. If you go on a P&O cruise and the bus breaks down or there's something goes wrong, that cruise will not set sail without their passengers. So that's something to consider when you're thinking of doing something that's really big. I mean, I can give you an example of that. If you go to somewhere like Pisa or Florence or Rome, that generally tends to be maybe 1.5, 2, even 3 hour drive out of the port. You can do it yourself. We've caught the train into Rome and caught it back again, but we gave ourselves plenty of time. But if you want to be absolutely safe and certain, get on one of the cruise excursions and know that you are going to get back. Now, there's other times, sort of excursions in the sort of between the two. So, you know, walking around the town, you're never going to pay for. Big excursions, you might want to. We went on the Lowen lift, the Sky lift, takes you up to the top of Mount Hoven, and P&O was charging at the time something like £120 or thereabouts. You get off the ship, you go across to the Alden Adventures office, you get your ticket, and you get on an Alden Adventures shuttle bus that takes you to the Lowen lift, where you give them the Lowen lift ticket, and you go up onto the top of the mountain. You can also do that by booking directly with Alden Adventures, and they also have a very good cancellation policy, so if for any reason the ship doesn't turn in port or you can't get up because of the weather or something like that, they've got a good cancellation policy for that. You get your money back, and it was like £70, so it was a £50 each saving. What are P&O doing extra to warrant that extra 50 odd quid? I don't know. You can go up on the Lowen Skylift for about £35–40 just to get up if you buy the ticket in, but you don't get the shuttle bus, and it's about 6 kilometres away from the port. There's no taxis, so it's sort of, you know, you've got to make your mind up which way you're going to do it. But for me, those are the excursions where you have to sit down and work out whether you're actually getting a good deal from the cruise line. And my advice is always, if you're going to go on something, check the actual place that you're going, see how much they charge for you just to walk up, and then work out if there's a better way of getting there or a cheaper way of getting there. We once went on a snorkeling trip out of Barbados on a place called Cool Runnings. It's a catamaran, and it was £39 each to travel independently, and it was £39 to go with the cruise line. That's a no-brainer. Get on the cruise line bus, they take you there, they bring you back, and if there's any problem, you know the ship's not going anywhere. So that's excursion. If you're thinking of going for a dip in the pool or the hot tub, just be aware there are no changing rooms by the side of the pool, so you'll need to figure something out for yourself. Now, some people, they sort of bring some sort of overclothes and throw them on and then go back to the room. Some people walk all the way through the lift lobbies and corridors dripping wet through, which not really appropriate, you know, I wouldn't do that. And some people actually strip off in the middle of the pool and get changed. I saw a young lady yesterday with just a towel wrapped around her, dropping a costume on the floor, and hey, I've got no problem with that, but I tell you, if that wind blows and that towel gets dropped, you're going to be quite embarrassed. So take care when you're getting changed. So a question that gets asked on a frequent basis is, do we actually need to bring towels with us? Well, fortunately no, you've got all the towels that you need in your cabin. Plus, when you get to a pool or hot tub, you will see that there is towel stations where you can pick up the towels and drop them off when you finish with them. Don't need to take them back to the room, don't need to get them cleaned, there's no towel cards, you just pick up what you want, drop off what you finish with. Easy. People often ask, do they need to dress up on what they now call celebration night, what we know as formal night? And the answer to that is no, you don't. Now, let's just look back in history a little bit. Formal night was that night when you got your dinner jackets on and your ball gowns and you just went to town. And personally for me, that's part of the cruise. It's a little bit of fun, everybody gets super dressed up and it just adds to the experience. But there's a lot of people who don't want that, I understand that, and so they like to stay casual. And on celebration night, you've got the choice of doing that. There's a couple of restaurants that sort of insist on relatively formal wear, the buffets, and one or two of the other restaurants you can go to, and you can go in your normal clothes. Now you just have to remember that even on formal nights, casual, smart as they call them, there's a dress code. And you need to go and check what that is in the magazine that you get on board, or you can have a look on their website before you book. Generally, they don't like you going into the restaurants with football shirts on, shorts, bikinis, swimwear, that sort of thing. They like you to be dressed relatively smartly. And I don't think that's unreasonable. That's exactly what you'd find in a normal hotel, to be honest. My final tip, all you new cruisers, is go and check Facebook, because what seems to be the trend at the moment is somebody is starting up a Facebook group specifically for your cruise. So in this case, we went on Facebook and we searched G311 Fjords, and sure enough, thanks to a guy called Michael Gaston, there was a Facebook page already set up, and wow, there were something like 800 people already joined up. And apart from it being an absolute massive knowledge, because a lot of people have been on your ship before, a lot of people have been to your destinations before, and a lot of people are regular cruisers, so they really do know the answers to your questions. The other thing is, you get to actually make quite a few new friends, and I've managed to meet one or two people on the Facebook page, and it's been quite fun to interact with them before we actually even got here. And we have seen them on the ship, believe it or not. There's nearly 5,000 people on the ship, and we still managed to bump into each other. So I would suggest you go and check on Facebook and see if you've got a group for your cruise, because that's where you're going to find a lot of your answers. But do make sure you get more than one answer, because these people aren't always right. And things change, because we haven't been on a cruise since 2017, and a lot has changed since we last cruised. So make sure that you get good advice, especially if it's things like, what time does the ship leave? Don't rely on Facebook for that, make sure you actually know. Okay, well, that's all the tips I've got for you new cruisers, and we hope to see you again. Please check out some of my other videos which are appearing on screen now. And until the next time we're on a cruise, which is either going to be next year or in the next month, depending on what the prices are, then we will see you very shortly. Don't forget to check out the rest of my videos on my channel, and if you liked this video, then we would really appreciate a nice big like at the end of it. Until then, this is Robert from Rob and Sue, and wishing you happy cruises.